Adnan Virk with ESPN, you are now moving away from college football and into your true passion, which is films and Oscars. This is your second year predicting with us. How did you do last year?
I did really good, Chris. Out of the gate, I believe I was 7 of 7. Maybe I'm shortchanging myself. Maybe I was 10 of 10. But it was funny. All my coworkers at ESPN were joking, saying that I'm like at the NFL draft. I have the envelope. I'm the commissioner, Goodell, before everybody else actually gets to read it. But I did great. From then on, things slowed to a trickle. Overall, I believe I went middle of the pack. I'm going to say, how many categories was there? 21, maybe 14.
It was 24 with the shorts.
Okay, yeah. So I think it was 15 out of 24. So it was all right. I started out like a house on fire, and then unfortunately disappointed a little bit down the stretch. But thank you for having me on here again. Thanks for making me a part of Gold Derby. Since we've spoken, I now do a movie podcast for ESPN Cinephile, and I can't thank you enough. I think the fact that Gold Derby actually has been on the site, that has allowed me to persuade my bosses to do it. As I'm sure you know, and for anybody who knows in life, if you tell your bosses you want to do something you're passionate about and you'll do it for free, no one's going to say no to that. So thank you for having me a part of Gold Derby and for allowing me to follow my passion, as you mentioned.
Well, as I've told Tom and many others over the years, I follow sports. That's why I knew you loved movies so much. And yeah. I think of all this as a sport. You get to predict. You get to, I guess if you go to Vegas, you can bet. We discuss it all day long as to who's going to win, just like sports. So it's really in the same league.
Yeah, the biggest challenge I find with Gold Derby is that I want to give – I always find this, like, what will win and what should win. So obviously for those that don't know the site, they say, well, how could you put this film here? I'm like, listen, I'm trying to predict what the voters are going to say. If it was my own ballot or Chris Beachum's ballot, I'm sure we would widely disagree sometimes in certain categories. So I hope that enough of a connect is there between what I think and what the voters actually think.
Well, that's turning out to be the case for me this year. My favorite movie is La La Land, and so it's rare that I get to actually celebrate for a little while in terms of possibly winning a bunch of Oscars. Is that what you think is out front at the Best Picture?
Yeah, I think it's a slam dunk, Chris. I remember talking to Matt Atchity of Rotten Tomatoes on my podcast Cinephile back in October, and he had seen the film at TIFF at the Toronto Film Festival, and he said, it's over. And I said, come on, the Oscar race hasn't even started yet. He said, no, this is going to win. You can already book it. And then I saw the film in mid-December once it started to open, and it has all the elements. First off, forget about the quality of the film, which we'll get into in a second, but just all the elements of a Best Picture winner, which is that it's nostalgic yet contemporary. It features charming actors who are well-liked by the Academy and give great performances. Career high, I think, definitely for Emma Stone. Damien Chazelle's a young director. He's got that it thing right now after Whiplash, and then making a film like this. It's a musical, which is an underrepresented genre, so if it's actually done well, the Academy really appreciates it. And mostly it's about Hollywood. So obviously we all know how self-referential, self-absorbed Hollywood can be, so what's not to love? But to your point, the actual quality of the film, musicals are not my forte, so I went into it a little bit guarded. But that first scene is outstanding. The final 20 minutes is extraordinary. It's not my personal favorite movie of the year just because my tastes, like I said, can go in a different direction, more in Silence and Manchester by the Sea and some of the other films mentioned. But I have no quibble when La La Land wins Best Picture. And I think in a year which has been tough for a lot of us, 2016, between not only the hand-wringing over the election and celebrity deaths, I think it's nice to see a bright, joyous film which reminds you of the beauty of filmmaking get recognized as a Best Picture.
The other two movies that really, it's like a threesome this year that are getting nominated for everything, everywhere. You just mentioned one of them, Manchester by the Sea, and Moonlight being the other one. Where do you see them falling in the whole mix of possible wins?
I have felt like, Chris, Moonlight's lone salvation is Mahershala Ali, the terrific actor who's been giving strong performances for years and is now really having his moment to shine, which is nice to see, like on a large stage now. People are going to know him as an Oscar winner. It felt like to me, he's carrying the torch for that film, and they're going to say, listen, we're going to nominate Moonlight for Best Picture. Barry Jenkins is a lock for Best Director, and will be a few other categories as well. But Mahershala really is the one that's going to win, and that's going to be Moonlight's lone salvation. And I still feel that way, although I did think Moonlight winning Best Drama at the Golden Globes was interesting. Now, you and I both know Hollywood Foreign Press is a very small group. It is not totally reflective of the Oscars, so anybody who thinks there's a correlation isn't always the case, but that was notable to me that it won Best Drama. And I think Manchester by the Sea, speaking of carrying the torch, in this case, there's two people. It's Kenneth Lonergan for screenplay, who I think is a cinch for original screenplay and deserves it because Not only is the story rife with tragedy and grief, but also a ton of humor, which I don't know how he pulled off that trick of making such a serious movie and making it really funny. I remember there was one critic said, this is the funniest movie ever made about grief, and I would agree with that. And also Casey Affleck, of course, for Best Actor. So I think Moonlight gets Supporting Actor. I think Manchester by the Sea gets the Oscars for Original Screenplay for Lonergan and for Best Actor for Affleck. But Owen Gleiberman, my buddy over at Variety, the chief film critic there for years, was the film critic, Entertainment Weekly. We just had him on Cinephile, my podcast, a couple weeks ago, and he said, watch out for Manchester by the Sea. He said, if there is a potential upset for Best Picture, that's the one that it would be.
So you think in terms of Casey, he's got actor, or do you think it's still a fight between him and maybe Denzel?
No, I think it's going to be his now. There was a little bit of backlash, Chris, as we know, but the talks about Casey Affleck and some incident in the past with sexual harassment and stuff that happened on set. And when I saw that brewing, I said, well, you never know how these things can start to spin off in a PR-wise. But I think whatever controversy was there was quelled by the fact that his performance really is astonishing. And for better or for worse, the voters are focusing on just the work itself. For Denzel, I mean, it is a wonderful return to form. I mean, he hasn't had a great performance like this since at least Training Day, and I would argue it's the equal of some of his best work, which for me is Malcolm X and Glory. So it is a nice return to see one of our best actors give one of his best performances, and for it to be a passion project in which he also directed it. It's nice to see him exploring subject matter, which we don't often see a whole lot of. This August Wilson drama about Black life in the 50s. So I think he's got a chance, but I think Affleck, people realize it. I mean, Denzel's a great actor who has 2 Oscars to his credit. Casey Affleck, I don't think anybody saw this coming. He's a good actor in Gone Baby Gone. Everyone knows his brother, but when you watch Manchester by the Sea, the way he holds that film together with his stoicism and that just mask of grief that is bubbling beneath him, but it's underneath all these other undercurrents. It's an astonishing performance. I think for Denzel, the salvation is going to be Viola Davis is going to win for supporting actress, and that's going to be the flag bearer for Fences.
Yeah, such a fine performance. The one thing I think Denzel's got going for him, and it's got to work this, he's got one path, as they said, around the political timeline in November. Yeah, all of these studios are good at putting out storylines. You know that from your business. And they're starting to have it bubbling up in stories that he's never, believe it or not, he's never won a SAG award. And some of his best work was before the SAG awards were around, like Glory and Malcolm X. So he's never won at the SAG awards. If he were to win there, right as the ballots are going out for the final ballots to vote for winners, that might be the way that he gets in there in terms of the conversation.
No, that's a great point. As you well know, the Globes are not necessarily a good precursor, but the SAGs are. Whenever I see the 4 acting winners for Best Actor, Best Actress, Supporting Actress, I go, all right, pencil them in there for the Oscars, because generally the actors are the largest voting branch for the Academy, so if they're voting for their own there, they have the largest group in the Oscars, generally bet on that. So you're right. If Denzel wins a SAG, then all of a sudden I feel like it's more 50-50. Another narrative, too, which is fascinating, is Denzel's never won a BAFTA, and I believe may have never even been nominated for a BAFTA Best Actor.
Yeah, when they came out, I didn't realize that. So another website pointed out that he has never been nominated at the BAFTA.
How is that possible? I mean, that was literally left me incredulous. I couldn't believe that.
I don't know. He's had so many great performances, and they've been around forever. It's not like they even have the excuse of like Glory and the Malcolm X days. The other one that really has me intrigued, I think you're right on track with the 3 out of the 4 acting races. I don't know that we've Emma Stone seems to be out front for actress, but Natalie Portman, I know she lost at the Globes, but that's still a really tough race to me.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be neck and neck, and we know the Academy certainly loves biographies and loved the Kennedys, and Portman is a well-liked actress and was phenomenal in Black Swan, so she's won before. But I got to be honest, Chris, you may disagree with me on this. I found Jackie to be terribly disappointing. Now, we know that not necessarily the quality of film equates with the winner sometimes. As I just mentioned, there's other forces at work. But I think if the voters actually sit down and say, what's the better movie, La La Land or Jackie? La La Land is clearly the better film. And as good as Portman is in Jackie, getting the mannerisms of Jackie and just the posture and the voice, the costume, I thought it was a really tedious film. And this is only an hour, 35-minute movie. I mean, I was hoping for actually a traditional biography and to find out her upbringing and how she first met JFK and what her life was after. This film only focuses on a small portion of it. And I don't think the film's going to do well. I think she'll get nominated. And you're right, she's got a chance to win, but I don't think it's getting picture or any maybe makeup in some of those other categories, perhaps. But I was really disappointed by the film and surprised it's gotten such good reviews.
We have seen people like a Julianne Moore, Still Alice. I mean, that's not a good movie. That's a Lifetime movie. But so, a really great performance in a weak movie, win before. So I don't think it's out of the realm. I had said for weeks, of all the groups, I mean, we knew Emma Stone was going to win comedy musical actress at the Globes. I mean, that was a lock.
Right.
But I thought playing a struggling actress was going to help her with SAG voters up against Natalie Portman and Amy Adams and some of these others. So I've always felt that was going to be maybe her salvation there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I also feel like Best Picture winners, they need to have something beyond just picture. Like that was such an anomaly that Spotlight won Best Picture, and I was thrilled for it. But to win it without winning Best Director or any of your actors winning, I mean, that is so exceptionally rare to only win 2 Oscars overall. I believe it was Screenplay and Picture. So that's the other thing. I feel like if La La Land is going to rout, which I think it is, I think it's going to win cinematography and costume, all those major categories, production design, then I think the voters will kind of feel like, all right, let's just not make this to be an award for a really beautiful looking film. This also has some weight in the acting. And Gosling obviously isn't going to win, so Emma Stone's the one way you can reward a performance as well. And then I think it feels a little bigger if you go, oh, La La Land was the Best Picture, Best Actress, in addition to all these production categories.
We'll get back to Oscars in a second, but I'm just wondering, La La Land is not up for SAG Ensemble, which is rare for the Best Picture frontrunner not to be, but it's essentially two people, and they're both nominated, so I don't feel bad about that. But I'm telling you, that ensemble race at SAG is a barn burner. Manchester, Moonlight, Hidden Figures, Fences. I'm not sure about Captain Fantastic. I don't think it's probably in 5th place. Yeah. But those first 4 I named, because of the large ensemble nature and so many familiar faces, you can make a case for all 4 of those there.
Yeah, I personally, just thinking about it, I keep thinking the Manchester ensemble is great because not only Casey Affleck, Michelle Williams is going to get nominated. She's not going to win because Viola Davis is going to win for Fences. But listen, Kyle Chandler, Lucas Hedges, I mean, all the supporting players, I think, are all pitch perfect.
Matthew Broderick?
Broderick, right, out of nowhere, just shows up for a couple scenes as this devout Christian husband of the sister there. Like, I agree. I think that there's a lot of performances, even just the smaller parts, that they nail the authenticity of it, whether they're known actors or not. To me, that's a film where it completely relies upon 2 factors, and that is the writing and the acting, and it's a showcase for both of those. So I felt like that was strong acting. But listen, Fences I think also has a shot because, like you said, Denzel never won a SAG before. Viola's going to win for supporting actress. All the other actors, I think that the Academy does love when stage material is adapted. They feel like it's the actors that carry it, and again, Fences is being carried by the writing and by the acting.
When we were talking before we started this chat, you are so disappointed at the reception for Silence.
So bummed out right now, Chris. And I do this every time. I get so wrapped up, and then people laugh at me and they go, "Why do you care so much about award shows?" Everyone knows just because award shows are created, that is not indicative of what the best films are. We can go through the course of history. Hitchcock never won a competitive Best Director Oscar. Vertigo didn't win Best Picture. Pulp Fiction didn't win Best Picture, nor did Shawshank Redemption. We can do this every year. Raging Bull, Goodfellas. But to me, an artist of Martin Scorsese's caliber, when he makes these films that are really from his heart and from his soul, I would like to see those films rewarded, especially when I think it's worthy of all the attention. And normally, 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, and one of the LA papers calling it Best Picture of the Year, and National Board of Review saying it's one of the 10 best, and giving it Best Adapted Screenplay. To me, when you make a film, it's extraordinary that Scorsese even got the movie made, Chris. I mean, this is a $50 million movie about spirituality and religious persecution of Jesuit priests based on a novel by a Japanese author, Shisako Endo, written based on real life events in the 17th century. These movies don't get made anymore. Let's be honest. Either it's superhero movies or really small independent movies, and that's it. To make like a mid-level movie with a $50 million budget with this kind of challenging subject matter, already that's a feat itself. They all worked for scale, not only Scorsese, but Andrew Garfield and Liam Neeson and Adam Driver. So already the backstory to me is compelling. Scorsese wants to make this movie for 28 years. Then I saw the film. I saw it in New York City, December 24th, the day after it opened. I mean, I'm in that theater. These are true cinephiles. Like, nobody's watching this movie unless you are really into Scorsese and his work. And I thought it was extraordinary. I mean, for a guy whose camera is always so kinetic and busy, This is his most contemplative film, his most meditative film. The camera's rarely moving. It's very observant. I thought the level of humanism, it reminded me of a Kurosawa film, not only the Japanese subject matter, but the way Kurosawa made Ikiru late in his life, a movie that kind of almost takes stock of his themes and what he cares about. And to me, that's challenging cinema, Chris. If this kind of film doesn't get recognized by the awards, then people aren't going to go see it. They're going to say, I'll go watch Rogue One again, or Why Him, the Bryan Cranston film. They're not going to say, let's go see Silence. So I was already stunned when the Globes ignored it, but I said, well, it's a late release. That's not a huge deal. Producers Guild, though, ignoring it for Best Picture concerns me, and I was devastated today when I saw Scorsese was ignored for Best Director. We know that it's not 100% the way the Guild goes to the Oscars, but it's fairly accurate. When your own people are not giving you the nomination, that's really upsetting to me and concerning to me. I agree with the major ones. Chazelle's going to win for La La Land. Like I said, the upstart, the new flavor in town. And obviously Whiplash was a great film as well. Kenny Lonergan for Manchester by the Sea. Barry Jenkins for Moonlight. And Denis Villeneuve, Canadian director, fellow Canadian, for Arrival. I thought that was a sci-fi film with a lot of brains, so I see that. But I really don't understand Garth Davis for Lion ahead of Scorsese. I mean, Lion, the first hour I think is extraordinary. The second hour feels a little too familiar, and it's a good film, but not a great film. I think what Scorsese is doing with Silence is at a really different level. And forgive me for admonishing, but shame on the DGA for not recognizing him.
I felt like he needed to make a run at BAFTA, because BAFTA has embraced him even more, I would say, than American Film Awards. So when he barely got in at BAFTA for anything, I felt like this run is probably over.
Yeah, what do you think it would take right now? Like if we Tuesday, January 24th, because I still think, listen, it's beautifully shot. Rodrigo Prieto is going to be up for cinematography, and generally, if you're up for editing, then you have a good chance at a Best Picture nod. So I still feel like January 24th, you and I are going to sit here and go, all right, Silence was nominated for 5 categories, but what's it going to take for a picture or director nomination?
Director is not out of the realm, because remember on DGA, that's tens of thousands of people, and the great majority of them are TV directors. So it's not an exclusive group. I don't know the exact number at the Oscars, but it's the directing branch is not one of the bigger branches at the in the Film Academy. Just a few hundred people, and they are very territorial. They'll often look for a veteran that they love. So it's very possible he gets in. I've still got Thelma in for editing. I think she's along the lines of, no matter what film John Williams does, he always gets in the composer's branch. Always, he's even going to get in for the BFG this year. So Thelma easily, I mean, again, a small branch of just editors. I could see them going for her. Cinematographers have already embraced this film.
Production design, Dante Ferretti, I think it's in as well.
They love him. I could see costumes. I had said all along, I felt like it was, until we got to the actual guilds the last few weeks, 7 or 8 was not going to surprise me for that film.
Yeah, what do you think it goes to? I'm equating it to 2 things. One, I think challenging art house cinema. They feel like the branch was, you know what, we're already covered in that respect with Moonlight. That's the indie film that is off the beaten path that we'd like to embrace. La La Land's going to win, Manchester by the Sea, et cetera. Like, I feel like they've checked those boxes, and Silence being a 2-hour, 35-minute film about religious persecution, which is, even, and I loved it, it is long and can be challenging, and maybe some found it boring and repetitive, but I still don't understand. Maybe a bit of jealousy against Scorsese. I mean, listen, he has been nominated for virtually every movie he's made the last 5 years, whether it's Wolf of Wall Street or Hugo or Waiting for the Departed or The Aviator or Gangs of New York. Like it isn't. I shouldn't be too sympathetic, because it's not like he hasn't been recognized for all these other films. But I honestly, I'm really quizzical about why it isn't working out this time.
I think more than anything on that film, the lateness of the release. I mean, they didn't even decide they were releasing it until early November, and then it was the Critics' Choice voters didn't even have a chance to see it before they voted. And I've got to say, a lot of these groups look towards a Critics' Choice. Golden Globe voters, probably several of them didn't see it, so they look toward those nominations when they're making their nominations.
Okay, well, I guess that makes sense then. My only hope, the salvation here, is the film's in wide release it's opening this Friday, actually. So hopefully enough people see it. But as you and I know, the ballots are going to be in soon. So I'm not sure how much.
Well, they did send the DVDs out, Paramount did, to all the Oscar voters. I'm not sure if they did for every group. So it might be one of those. Remember, another very late release that did not do well with most groups was American Sniper from Clint Eastwood.
Yes.
and then they got a couple, got in for picture and not director,
But
Bradley Cooper.
actor, nobody saw Cooper coming. You're right for acting, because he didn't get the SAG nomination.
Sometimes these late releases, we have very little knowledge on how to predict them.
I was going to go out on the ledge now, Chris. You're saving me from not risking eternal doom. I
don't anticipate Garth Davis getting a directing slot at the Oscars.
Right. This would be the most obscure director nomination since Ben Zeitline got nominated for Beast of the Southern Wild. I still can't believe when I saw his nomination. I said, "Where did this come from?" And that's a nice little movie. I liked Queven Wallace getting nominated. Child actors are historically underrepresented, but I remember thinking Ben Zeitline is one of the best 5 directors this year. Okay,
I will say the only person secretly that had to be rooting for the way this has fallen is Andrew Garfield, because having 2 strong lead performances for 2 strong directors, and I have been worried from the beginning because I like him so much. He did an interview with us. He's very nice. Yeah. I've been worried that he would get caught up in this group nominates him for Hacksaw and this group nominates him for Silence. And then the Oscar voters don't know what to do and he suddenly gets left out completely.
Yeah, that's true. You can see him kind of splitting the difference. Are you surprised Neeson's not going to get nominated? Because I'd say this. When I heard the name and his involvement, and he's never won before, I said, okay, he seems likely. Then I saw the film, and he's very good, but he's not critical to the movie. So I don't know how much of a part that is. But I feel like Neeson's right on the edge. If there were 6 nominees, he'd get there. But now I feel like he's just on the outside looking in.
Way back, we start predicting in late August. I thought, again, like you did, they, in that one category, supporting actor over the years, they love the veterans. They love veterans that haven't won before.
Right. Tommy Lee Jones, Fugitive.
Tommy Lee Jones, Christopher Plummer, just on and on and on. So I thought he felt the most like that type of person, but it just, he's in an opening scene for just a few seconds, and then he's critical to the plot line of the movie, but you don't see him again forever and ever. So.
Yeah, it's just an issue of screen time. A friend of mine thinks Driver's extraordinary in the movie. I said, well, I think he's going to get recognized one of these days, because I hadn't seen him give this kind of a performance, and he's gaunt and just emaciated. He's one of those actors you're going to see him, I think, get some hardware one day.
Well, what else? Any other movie you wanted to talk about, or any other performance that really struck you this year?
I wanted to mention, just with ESPN, Chris, I know you've seen it, OJ Made in America. I remember watching that documentary, and there had been people that work at ESPN saying this is the best thing ESPN's ever done. Now, we've been in business since 1979, so I think we've done some pretty good things over the years. We may take some hits here and there, but I like our work when it's at its apex. And then I remember watching the first hour or so and thinking, okay, again, I lived it. I'm 38 now. I was 16 when the whole OJ trial went on. I remember it vividly. It's the first trial and something major newsy that I really paid attention to. And I thought it was interesting the way it was setting the stage and the background of LA and the riots and such. But I thought once that documentary hit its stride, it was extraordinary. And the first question I started getting asked by coworkers and friends is, can this win an Oscar? And I said, well, I don't know. It's under the 30 for 30 umbrella. And sometimes the rules can be a little bit tricky. And sometimes there are documentaries I assume that are ineligible, but then just don't make the cut. Like the Steve James documentary about Roger Ebert, Life Itself, which I thought was amazing. And then somehow didn't get nominated. And as you know, the docs sometimes, if the documentary is popular, they don't like rewarding it. It's almost like Wiener's not going to get nominated this year because people have seen it. They like to kind of reward documentaries people haven't seen. But everything I'm hearing is OJ Made in America is going to win, and I'm glad that it's eligible. I'm glad that's the front runner because it is an amazing piece of work. I mean, long form, but really well done.
Oh, I loved it. I watched the whole thing that week that it aired last summer. And my only problem is not an ESPN problem. I don't like things. They've got to figure out, is something a TV, should it be eligible for the Emmys, or should it be eligible for the Oscars? It should not be eligible on anything. We see it every year for 2 different kinds of media.
Yeah, that is always kind of confusing. You're right, because it is technically on television, but I guess it's eligible for film sometimes. So you're right. I think oftentimes it's not a clear enough delineation between that. But I'm pleased to see that film is going to get recognized. The other movie I was going to mention, Hell or High Water. This is a shame because this movie is not going to win anything. And then I think a lot of people, when they hear the nomination, will go, okay, Bridges is up for it. Maybe I'll see it. I don't know if it gets a Best Picture nod. It's not going to get a director nod. I hope people go see this movie, Chris. It came out late August. I remember when it came out, everyone said, all right, this is the first great film of 2016. Go see it. The Oscar race has begun. And I remember seeing it thinking it was excellent, but it would probably get lost by the wayside. So I hope enough people go see it because it's really atmospheric and a well-done drama. And aside from Bridges, I don't know how many nominations it's going to get.
Yeah, I think it'll get a handful. I think screenplay. I think possibly like a cinematography.
Hmm.
It'll get in for best picture, I believe.
Good.
So 4 or 5. That when we talk about sports, I
Hmm.
always talk about every team has like an expectation level.
Hmm.
Anything other than a national championship for Alabama or Clemson this year, coming
Hmm.
off of being in that game last year, was going to be a disappointment.
Right.
But for a team like mine, Mississippi State, getting into a bowl game this year was good enough. So I think about that in terms of some of these films. That movie you just mentioned, and possibly a Florence Foster Jenkins or whatever, they want
Yeah.
to be invited to the party. They're not expecting major wins.
I'm glad you mentioned Florence Foster Jenkins. I had just seen the poster. I didn't know anything about it when it was released. And I said, okay, I'll wait until the buzz gets going. And if Meryl gets a nomination, I'll see it. So I saw it on DirecTV, and my mom was here. I said, oh, I'll watch it with my mom. That is a perfect movie to watch with your mother or your spouse. It is clean and yet really, I did not expect the humor in that movie. I thought it would be a well-made, tasteful period piece, but it is really funny. And not only is Meryl Streep really good, I know she's on the outside looking in for a nomination. I hope she gets in there. I know people have Meryl fatigue, but that Golden Globe speech I thought was great. So at least she's back in the public eye, even if people who didn't like the speech. And Hugh Grant, best work of his career, supporting actor. He's going to get nominated, and he was fabulous in that movie.
Yeah, that is a wonder. Well, it's been such a great movie year, even though it was not a great year for a lot of other things. Movies and television were incredible.
Yeah, and there's a documentary. I hope you saw it. I'm sure you did, and I hope people check it out. De Palma. Now, De Palma is not personally one of my favorite directors. I think at his best, he's great, like with Scarface or The Untouchables or his major film Clono's Way. I enjoy a lot, but sometimes he can make some misses. I thought that documentary by Noah Baumbach. As a film lover, I wish they did documentaries. Okay, let's do a documentary on Spielberg, and it's just him talking about every single one of his movies. I was a little bit hesitant going in, Chris, going, really? De Palma for an hour 40? Is that engaging? But he's a funny guy. He's a terrific raconteur. He's got anecdotes aplenty, whether it's casualties of war and Sean Penn getting in Michael J. Fox's head, or why studio heads have always frustrated him, even going back to the days of Carrie. So I don't know if it's going to get nominated for a documentary. I don't see it being mentioned anywhere, but I hope people see De Palma. That's a really good documentary.
Well, listen, how does somebody listen to your podcast?
Yeah, check it out. It's on the ESPN app. You can check out Cinephile. I just realized I was talking with my bosses. He said, people are messing up the pronunciation. I said, well, if you're a cinephile, you would know how to spell it. But it is Cinephile, not with an F or Sine. So it's on the ESPN app. Or if you just go to iTunes, if you Google my name, Adnan Virk, or Google Cinephile, it'll come up. I've been floored by the reception. And again, many, many thanks to you and Tom O'Neill and the whole team at Gold Derby for giving me some credibility. Because I think once people saw that, all right, he's actually listed as an expert on a true prognosticating site. This guy clearly isn't just being boastful about his passion. And it's been great to see. I'm sure, as you know, with podcasts, with your work at Gold Derby, it's become a new forum. And rather than just listening to the same old music on your local radio station, you go, let me think, let me engage, let me debate with whatever the podcast subject matter is. So we're officially listed under film and TV designation now on iTunes, so we're in good company. And I'm floored that people are even listening. It's really nice to have that outlet.
Well, let's get Gold Derby on there as a guest one day.
I was about to say, so my next one, we're doing one January 17th. I've got Ice Cube and my old buddy Ben Lyons locked up, but I want to have you or Tom O'Neill come on February 1st. So we'd love to. It'll be a week after the nominations, but you guys can handicap the Oscar race. So hopefully you'll I'm extending the invitation officially, but hopefully you can come on.
Well, perfect. I'll check with Tom, and I'm sure one of us can. That'll be the perfect timing too.
Yeah, it's great. I try to mention you guys as much as possible, and I've had people look up Gold Derby more now. Like I said, the biggest thing people say, they go, oh, how come Michael Musto thinks this should win? How could he think this? And I said, no, we're predicting that's going to happen, not necessarily our own personal taste. But I'll say this too. Your site is like a gold mine, because once you get in, you can't get out. Right now, I'm just doing.
They call it a rabbit hole. You
oh my goodness!
You click on one thing and it leads to another, and yeah, it's fun.
When you and Tom reached out to me, I felt like I only had capability for Oscar nominations. But then Tom said, "Listen, if you want to jump on the Emmys too," and I said, "I don't watch a ton of TV, but yeah, I can do a little bit." And then you had mentioned the Golden Globes, and I just checked earlier. I didn't realize. I think I have a lot more access to more categories than I realized. So I may.
Well, we just added all of these Guild events that are coming up, and some of them we only do 3 or 4 categories. But you and all the experts, well, anybody in the public, but definitely our experts can predict. DGA, PGA, SAG, visual effects. Cinema Audio Society. You can do any of those you want to do.
All right. Well, I've got something else to do the rest of my afternoon now that you've told me that. That's great news.
I tell you too, as you talk about making your picks and where they stand, when we're out at parties and receptions and like after the Globes, these stars, these directors, they know. I won't say who it was, but a very famous actress who's in the top 5 this year.
Yeah.
For lead at a party this weekend. We walked over, never met her before. Just hello, how are you? Chris with Gold Derby. Oh, I know. You've got me in 3rd at the for Best Actress.
Wow.
So,
well, there's another example of that I had. Somebody emailed me, one of the publicists, and said, "Can we send you a copy of Hacksaw Ridge?" And I'm not sure how many screeners you get, but generally I don't. I just go to the movie theater here and I just watch the movies the old-fashioned way, as they say. I don't have any credentials to get the screeners sent to me. So then I said, yeah, I'm going to go see Hacksaw Ridge. It's on my list. And then she said, okay, well, once you do, hopefully you can make adjustment to your Gold Derby. And I said, all right, great. So you're aware of where I have it right now, where I will be.
Oh, they are. Believe me, they are. I had another producer of a movie, I think it was Sunday night, he just kind of leaned in and secretly he said, whispered, I think I come to your site 10 times a day to refresh the odds.
Well, it's smart that you and Tom remind us too, because it is absolutely vital. If you miss a day, you miss a lot. Because you're right. Even in the past week, if I hadn't logged on, you've got BAFTA nominations, PGA, DGA. Like there is always a shifting landscape. So I'm glad that people are paying attention because it is accurate. I mean, for anybody who's not on Gold Derby, you go ahead and log on and see how accurate the majority of these choices are. It's uncanny. I remember last year at the Oscars, there was one of us, the experts, I can't remember who it was, I wish I could give him credit, actually predicted Mark Rylance Best Supporting Actor. That was extraordinary that he called that. I still don't know how he did. The rest of us all had either Ruffalo or Sylvester Stallone winning.
Oh, I know. And like this weekend from our users, the people, the thousands of people that just, around the world, I think it was 6 people. You saw how wild the Globes were. 6 people on the film side worldwide got 13 out of 14 categories. How?
I don't know how people do it. I mean, it's like who
they predicted Isabelle Huppert.
I was about to say who gets Isabelle Huppert for Elle? I'd say okay, the nomination, sure, but there's no way she's beating Portman in that category, and then she wins. And I said that. How can anyone predict that?
They predicted the La La Land 7 award sweep, which the Gold voters don't do sweeps. They like to, spread things out. So I don't know.
I wish
people are really smarter than me.
Oh, I wish you're good with it too. Don't be modest. I wish I got to see more foreign films. What can you tell me about The Salesman? I love Oscar Farhadi because I love the separation.
Elle, they did not move forward in the 9. I think there's 9 remaining. It'll go down to 5, on Oscar nomination morning. To me, it's probably between, I haven't seen it yet, The Salesman, and I have seen Tony Erdmann.
Right. How good is Tony Erdmann?
It's really good if you like German comedies.
I just saw the snippet at the Globes and I go, who's this guy wearing a wig? My wife goes, what's this movie about? It's like the front runner to win this thing. Okay.
I think Elle probably would have won, and Isabelle will get in for actress. But and by the way, a lot of people don't know, but when we were building our BAFTA prediction center, that was not a snub when she didn't get in at BAFTA. They did not screen Elle in Great Britain in time, so she wasn't eligible there. So don't suddenly remove her from your Oscar predictions because of BAFTA. If you want to remove her, that's your business. But anyway, I think it's probably it's The Salesman or Tony Erdmann if you're trying to figure out best foreign language film.
Oh, I'm dying to see The Salesman. I hope that's the one, and maybe I'll squeeze in some German comedy along the way.
Well, our one of our contributors just interviewed that director yesterday. We'll have that posted later today.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, he is. I remember when A Separation came out, and Roger Ebert said this is the best film of the year. So I've got to see this, and I've seen it multiple times. It's one of those films that you definitely leave thinking about, and you want to see it again. I don't know how you create a movie like that that's so intricate, and he's done it now. Apparently, The Salesman again.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's finish up. I know you finished college football. Where will we see you next on ESPN?
Yeah, so I'm getting a little time off. As you said, I'm indulging my true passion right now with movies and the Oscars, but I'll be back and doing some college basketball work at the end of the month and then all of February. And then spring training will hit us around mid-March when we start gearing up with baseball tonight at ESPN. So I'm hoping I get to go back down. I had a nice little trip here to the college football, being in Miami for the Orange Bowl and Tampa for the National Championship. So it's nice when the work is enjoyable and rewarding, and you've also got sunshine. So if I can finagle a trip to for spring training on behalf of ESPN, I'll really be laughing.
Florida and Arizona, you definitely want to do that. Oh, a quick question, because I love Hall of Fames and Halls of Fame and all of those kind of things. Baseball Hall of Fame next week. Do you got a feeling on who's going to make it?
Well, this is stunning, Chris. I thought for years these guys aren't getting in, meaning the steroid users, and particularly Bonds and Clemens. And now I'm fascinated by this development. I'm reading the people who track the ballots. And one, Tim Raines, being Canadian and growing up a few hours from Montreal, he apparently is tracking at 90%, 75% above and getting the Hall. This is his 10th year on the ballot, so this would be his final year. So Tim Raines is going to get in, which has already caused for enormous celebration for me and all the Expos fans who remember how good he was. He's been held back because people look at old stats like batting average and RBI, and if you look at on-base percentage, Raines was 385, which, as we all know, OBP is a better indicator of getting on base rather than just batting average, and the 800 stolen bases and all the rest of it. So Raines is going to get in, but apparently Bonds and Clemens are on the cusp, and this is crazy because they were tracking at 38%, low 40s, so you'd see incremental movements up, but I said in 10 years, just looked at the math, they're not going to be able to do it. So even hearing word that they're even in the 50s and 60s right now, to me, is astonishing. So I'm very curious. I guess the biggest reason for the shift is they have more younger voters. And if you look at baseball fans and baseball media, Chris, there's a real delineation point. People who are 40 and under go, we can't track everybody who was on steroids, so we can't just say he did, he didn't. And those that did were still playing in this era. We have to be representative of the era. This is not the Hall of Good People. This is the Hall of Fame of people who performed at a high level. So get Clemens and Bonds, the rest of these guys in there. And then the older voters who have said, no, I'm not going to support cheating on any level. I know they did, so they're not getting in. We're starting to see a shift now. But Piazza getting in, a lot of people think he used steroids, never actually failed a test, so that was a bellwether point. And Jeff Bagwell is tracking high as well, who, again, if you look at the numbers, should be in the Hall of Fame. The only reason he's being held back is people presume he was using steroids. So Bagwell and Raines are going to get in. I'm fascinated to see what happens with Bonds and Clemens. Even if they don't get in, Chris, if they're tracking at 60, they're getting in a couple of years then.
That year that they do get in, let's say it's next year or the year after, because I don't think they'll get 75 this year. Although, when the other voters see jumps like that, that does mean good things for the following year or so. What kind of reception will they have from other Hall of Famers? Will they not show? Will they turn their backs? I mean, what do you think will happen?
Barry Larkin, my old colleague and friend on Baseball Tonight, when he got inducted, he told me he got calls. Frank Robinson was one of them. I can't remember the other players, but they said, hey, listen, thanks for getting in. We're never voting in those guys who are dirty. We know you played clean. And if those guys ever get in, we're not showing up. So I know the younger people are going to laugh and say, well, that's a real get off my lawn moment, that you think just not showing up is going to be a big deal. But you know as well as any sport, baseball is all about history and rewarding the past. And that would be a rather awful sight if you went to Hall of Fame weekend and you were missing 20 major Hall of Famers. I mean, that would be a heck of an incident. And I think, according to what these guys say, they're not going to show up.
Well, thank you so much. It's always great to talk to you. I'm gonna be watching your picks over the next 4 or 5 weeks to see how you're moving things up and down.
No, I appreciate it, Chris. It's definitely going to be fun. And like I said, you or Tom got to come on my podcast in a couple of weeks, so we'll reach out. I look forward to talking more. And best of luck to your Mississippi State Bulldogs. A bit of a down year this year. Dan Mullen, we love Dan Mullen, by the way. Every chance we get when we make crazy Eddie stories, references, of course, Randy Quaid in Christmas Vacation, who he seems to have a rather stunning resemblance to. But you must be pleased with Dak Prescott. Cowboys-Packers, going to be a lot of fun this weekend.
Yeah, the Prescott thing really salvaged a year, and so somehow we made a bowl. I don't know how, but that's like 7 or 8 years in a row, so we'll take it.
It's good news in SEC country. It is quite a conference. I know the ACC obviously won with Clemson, but SEC football, no matter what, is always a ton of fun to watch.
Well, listen, have a great day. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. We'll talk soon.